Hey, it's Mopar Keith. Welcome back to my channel. Currently, we have a very special car in the shop for preservation. It is a true survivor, 1971 Dodge Challenger RT. This is a 440 automatic car. We are going to go through the car with great detail and show you every little aspect of the car. We're going to start off with the engine bay and the underside of the car, and we're going to show you like inspection marks, bolts, all the fasteners, the way the factory would have oversprayed, and seam sealer, and undercoating, and just everything that the factory would have done. And these are things that you won't normally find on a restored car. You're going to see the age of everything, and you're going to see just exactly how the factory would have assembled the car. So come along and we'll show you what's out in the shop. Thanks. Alright, we are in for a treat. We've been working on this 1970 Challenger RT, and this is pretty special because it's a rare color you just don't see very often. It's also all original paint. This car is very low mileage. Let's take a look and see just how low it is. It's actually not as low as I thought. It's really been well taken care of. 54,000 miles on this thing. This car is in amazing condition, and it's been sitting for years with very little use. So the car was used, I guess, primarily when it was in its infancy, but in the last 30 years it's basically just sat. Let's see if we can point out a few things here. Alright, wherever it sat, like in a garage most likely, the sun must have been shining through a window to come down to this door and bake this door panel out. The other door panel is really, really nice. Let's take a look. See, that thing is like mint. There's no scratches, no fading. It's just really nice. So whatever the reason, the sun must have been shining in on that door panel. This is all original carpet. It's in very nice condition, very clean. Obviously kept inside because the dash has 0 cracks. They always crack right there. If you're a e-body fan, you know this. Air conditioned car, original decals. Look at the way that thing shuts. So before we pull this car outside, let's do an in-depth look under the hood and up in the air on the hoist. All right, more documentation on the car today. And let me grab a light here and we'll go through the front end of this car. All right, we'll start here at the front. So we've got 2 coins. We've got the top one is number 77. So that number should be represented on the build sheet. On this connecting bar here, this brace, we've got a white inspection mark. Let's go over here. So the connecting rod here between the steering link, we've got an orange inspection mark that carries over to the 2 nuts. So that's all original. And we've got just a little, let's see, where is it? Here we go. Just a little remnant of it over here. So a little bit of orange on that. Here's the oil pan engine paint. So the pans never got painted on the bottom. And there's just, it's really faint, but there's an X on the bottom of that pan. So we've got the runs and no paint on the bottom. One thing to note is the coolant thing is not painted. All right, so like I was saying, the coolant plug is not painted with the block, so that's always bare. Let's see, you got the new spark plugs and wires in it today. And lots of cleaning. This car is super, super oily. Skid plate, got new fuel pump and the vapor separator, and I've got the correct style squeeze clamps on there. Let's see, cleaned up that so you can see that nice galvanizing. I guess they call it large flake galvanizing. There was an transmission line where it goes in. Not a yellow mount. Some of them are yellow. That thing's about smoked, probably from all the oil leaks. And let's go back here on the differential. We cleaned it up, new seals. So we've got a white one on the pinion. We've got a stencil marking there, orange there. We've got a blue dot on there and a white dot. And over here we've got two markings, yellow and orange. Let's see, and then the ever popular one on the back, I can't tell what that is. It might be a D. And the paper tag is long gone. Anyway, that's you could continue to clean on this car forever, but that kind of does it for our initial inspection marks. Oh, I know another one. So here's one right here on the top of that adjuster cam. And we've got the torsion bar ones I cleaned off. There's two for the left. They're kind of a brown color. One on the right side. So you got one on the right side. And then the other adjuster cam, it's got some orange on it too. Although there are many other parts of the car that are very important during a restoration, the engine bay always seems to be the heart of where things happen, and probably the most interesting part for most enthusiasts. So we're just going to go around and just kind of take a closer look at some of the things that have been monkeyed with and some of the things that are original. So I guess we'll just start with this power line right here. So obviously sometime in the car's history this solenoid wire has been damaged and it's been butt connected, so that yellow butt connector right there is not factory. So one thing that's unique about this car, well, we'll get into a lot of unique things, but here is the fender tag with its original clamp, and it still has part of the inspection tag, the aluminum tag that's right there, that's still original. Some of the clamps. Got cruise control, some of the fasteners. Now one thing I did see brought up in another forum at one time is how the cruise control cable bracket only had one nut. So right there, here's another example of how that bracket is only attached with one nut. So I don't know if this is a common thing or the way they did it. Obviously it looks like it could use another nut on there for stability, but it really just guides this cable. It doesn't really hold anything of substantial weight. Most likely the original master cylinder. This is a powered drum brake car. So this is the original diachromate or gold cad lid there with the phosphate clamp. Here's an inspection mark. Now this is a early build 1970 RT. And you can see that the blackout was crudely painted. We did a video on another RTSE V code, and it had even worse runs than this one. But this blackout right here was actually discontinued mid-year, so sometime in April and May is when this was discontinued. So there's the blackout. And it was sprayed with the whole car assembled. It was one of the last things sprayed before the car was put together. So you can see overspray down there. It's pretty clear how the spray technique was on top and it just drifted downward. And this kind of coincides with the same exact paint used for the core support. There's red clip and then the red anodizing Corbin clip for the vacuum booster. Note the routing underneath the throttle cable bracket. And another clamp. There's your AC vacuum for the vacuum controlled switches. Now one thing I'm not positive on, it really looks original, but I could be wrong, is that screw holding the ballast resistor right there, and it's also the same screws holding down the ECU box.
That's typically what you see right there is what's holding the voltage regulator. Get a close-up of that. Sloppy seam sealer. There's the bracket, or I'm sorry, I guess you can call it a clamp for the neutral safety switch wire on the bell housing. Now we did do spark plugs and plug wires on this as a maintenance procedure. And we did valve cover gaskets also. We reused or used a cork style gasket with seams or a gasket maker on there. So when we took the original gaskets off, it did have that same kind of tab sticking out. Now when I've taken this apart, I did remove this AC bracket back here to gain access to the plug wires. You see there's a paper tag for the ground cable. Vacuum or a PCV vacuum hose. There's some of that orange exhaust manifold paint and the valve cover stud. Eccentric nuts out. Sometimes I see on restorations where that bolt is actually turned around backwards, but the nut is to be exposed to the outside. Just trying to show as much detail as I can. Here's another thing that I notice sometimes is people will put this cowl seal on backwards. It's right here. It's open to the engine bay. And another thing I see commonly missed, like more missed than not, is this piece of cloth tape or friction tape that's over this hole right here. So there's supposed to be a tape that covers that hole, and then the seal is on top of it, and it's on both sides. And this goes for 71 and up B bodies, and all E bodies have that same cowl hole that's covered by cloth tape. Now in this 1970, there are Phillips head screws holding down the plastic vent covers. So in later models there would be clips, and there was also hex head bolts. While we're up into this cowl area, here's another thing that I see just totally messed up all the time, is the bolt plating. You should have a black phosphate bolt there and a chrome bolt here. This is always chrome, and along with the other one, let's get a close-up look at that. It's supposed to be a chrome bolt. I see so many people, they paint them, they get the plating wrong, but that's how it's supposed to be. And then on cheap paint jobs, you always see this insulation painted because people are too lazy to pull out the wiper control or the wiper mechanism. They just paint right over that gasket. There's paint over it, and it's such an easy thing to do when you're painting a car. Why not just spend the extra time and pull that wiper mechanism out instead of spraying paint on it? So correct bolts. Let's see, and then the screw right here. Here's another thing that people can't always seem to get. Let's see if I can get a close-up of it. This little tiny clip down there. And the camera won't even focus. little tiny clip that holds that rod on there. That's to keep the wiper arm straight. As we wrap our way around the engine bay here, we'll come over here to the core support blackout. And once again, we did another RTSE 1970, and it had almost the same exact core blackout, just completely sloppy. You can see how they didn't even get it over here, and they got maybe way too much over here. The other RT that we documented, this whole entire thing was all blacked out. But core support blackout so you don't see color behind the grill. So it appears this hood release spring is bare metal because it's got a kind of a rusty sheen to it. Then here's your hood latch. Get a good close-up of that. It's got kind of a blackish gray with some people say there's a tint of green to it. Plating on that, which also matches the secondary latch. So I have cleaned this, so it's about as clean as it's going to get. So that's your secondary latch that's plated, and then your striker right here, which is painted with the hood. Here's your painted clips for the core support to hood seal, and these clips are painted. Here's a clip for your hood insulation. Now they do reproduce these clips. However, the spring steel that they use is very brittle. So whenever I can, if I have to replace the hood insulation, I'll try to source some original clips. And those very well could have been bare metal, just because they're pretty rusty right now. One core support blackout. And you can see how the condenser had black on it. But then the pipe, I'd call that the high pressure side. The high pressure side pipe looks to be kind of maybe a silver zinc plating. There's a cushion clamp. There's original hood bumpers. Here's one thing that's missed a lot. A flat washer belongs here. So right here, that's supposed to be a flat washer. Sometimes you see a star washer, but on all E-bodies hood pins that I've ever seen, it's a flat washer. Here's the original lanyard. Now I don't know if this alternator is original. I have not checked the date code on it. One thing that is suspicious to me is it doesn't have any kind of markings on it. Usually I've been seeing like a giant orange inspection mark on it, and I have not seen that on this car. Belt deflection bracket. And most likely because it's an AC car, we have a lot going on here with the wires here. We got cloth tape holding some stuff down to the fuel line. Original carburetor. Don't believe it's ever been off the car.
Alright, so we've been using the Galen Govier white books, and these things are invaluable for part numbers, date codes, and all kinds of stuff. And on this Dodge Challenger, we have looked at some of the part numbers on the car, and we've got a carburetor number of 4741S. And 4741S is correct, and the original carburetor for this 1970 Challenger 440 RT automatic car.
Alright, continuing with the engine bay look here. So you can see I've cleaned this pretty good, and you can see that the core support blackout, they just hose it like crazy. So it's all over the place inside here. And then there's that cam adjuster bolt or nut that's poking through, and there's a little white inspection mark there. There's the part numbers on the receiver dryer and the high pressure cutoff switch, part number, and stenciling. Some more exhaust manifold paint that still exists. Here's your coil. And the stenciling on the coil. Let's see if I can get a picture of this. So it actually, on the Prestolite distributor cap, it does read "Made in USA." So that's absolutely the original one. There's a better close-up of that coil. Also made in USA. Alright, here's a little interesting tidbit. I pulled the battery tray out, and this is the dip primer. This is the gray primer underneath the battery tray, and this is obviously upside down, but you can see the drips right here, right here, right here, there and there. So these are the drips underneath the car as it drips dry, and there's some undercoating that would blow through one of the inspection holes. Let's go take a look over here. So before the car is assembled, this hole right there, this is the alignment inspection cover, and the undercoating obviously blew right through there. All original except for the wires right there. So we did the wires today, and the reason I pulled the battery tray off is a good way to clean, and I could actually get to that bracket. Now here's a really good example of the exhaust manifold paint that still exists. So this car has 52,000 miles on it, and the paint was so thick there it still has not burned off. So there's a factory style stud. Big blocks always have the stud in the corners. So anyway, all original. The belts have been replaced, but you can tell that the hoses are original there. So yeah. Move this light a little bit here. Let's go back to the firewall. Get back to that voltage regulator bolt. There's your cowl blackout. Just kind of super sporadic everywhere. And there's that piece of tape I was talking about. Like a white zinc or silver cad. I'd call it white zinc, I guess. So heater blower motor. Yellow diode chromate on the heater control valve. Now this hose here looks to be plated kind of a yellow, and then over here that same one is painted black. Do a couple more close-ups of the fasteners here. looks to be the same fastener that holds the accumulator on. Hood hinge with the large washer. And the fender bolts. So you can see there's some inconsistencies, but basically they would just get bolts from whatever vendor. Alright, well, that's pretty much the ins and outs of this engine bay. Like I said, I did put a new fuel pump on it and replace the hoses with the correct style keystone clamps. The original belts are long gone. These are some decent Gates belts on there right now. I would like to see a reproduction restoration belt on that, but it's not up to me. The owner might choose to do that later. Obviously a modern battery just because. Alright, so I think that kind of takes care of the engine bay for right now.
Okay, so we've watched a long video and documentation of just about everything under the hood and under the engine K-frame. We've looked at carburetor numbers, solenoids, belts, brackets, bolt heads, just about everything you can think of on the car, really in depth. I really appreciate you staying around, watching it to the end. Please share, like, subscribe, and we're going to be back to document more parts of the car. We're going to do the trunk, the interior. We're going to do some paint depth measuring on the exterior of the car, and we're also going to look at the braking system. So please return, and thanks for watching.